Thank you very much, Pep. Thank you very much for the invitation to speak today. I feel very honored. So I would like to speak about higher education and learning in today's digital environments and give you some humble examples of what we have been trying here and there to do at the European University Institute. So what I think the real question we have to ask is, I have to do this. I think the real question we should ask is, how should we look at teaching and learning today if we really want to exploit its potential for lifelong learning? The question comes down, so how should we teach? It was knowledge, what also was mentioned by Pep, knowledge is out of date so quickly, and we have to teach sometimes things we do not even know what the skills or the competences or the knowledge should be for people or they want to have. So what I would like to provide you is to firstly to think about what online learning can offer and how it can help to remove constraints we are having, but also not to lose focus of other important things. So I would like to give you an analytical focus of 3 areas where I think we should be focusing our attention to, and then to exemplify these by some things we have been doing here. So I'm using is the mouse there? Okay. So I think what we should be focusing on, so I'm proposing 3 areas, stepping back a little bit with all these hype about MOOCs and about, there's lots of ideologies now how learning should be working or should not be working. I mean, I think the 3 areas I would suggest to focus our attention on if we are speaking about higher education and teaching and learning there is firstly the interaction between research and teaching and learning, and I'm telling you in a minute what I mean by that. The second is how we can create and how higher education institutions should help to create communities of learners or communities of experts. And thirdly, what does learning mean if we are talking about people who have then to engage with the world to make the world a better world? And how can we create synergies in these 3 areas? So, firstly, research, the interaction between research and teaching and learning. So it has really been a buzzword over these past years, to enhance teaching and learning and to excellence in teaching and learning. And just a few days ago, there was a supplement in Times Higher Education by the Higher Education Academy from the UK, where it said, teaching in higher education is having a zeitgeist moment. It is starting to come out of the shadow of its glamorous sibling research to step into its own spotlight. So I think that is very nice and that's very important, and there's a lot of focus now giving on frameworks for teaching and learning. I think there's currently an open consultation in the UK on that. There's a lot of focus on learning outcomes and quality assessments, but I think we should not lose sight of one thing, which is research. So are they really, do we want to consider them siblings living next to each other, or do we want to consider them as a couple interacting with each other? And so the question should be how to make research and teaching really interact. And one example how we are trying to do this is, so you know that at the European University Institute we are having a research center which Brigitte Lafan is directing, the Robert Schuman Center for Advanced Study, and we are hosting there more than 150 scholars, and in 2014 there were published more than 400 publications. But what we are also doing there is that we are carrying out professional training. So we are training people who are working, energy regulators, bank supervisors, judges, journalists, among many others. And in some of these training activities, what we have been trying to do is to create feedback loops between research and training. So to feed in, so for example, we've been organizing, it's just one small example, but we've been organizing interactive webinars by researchers within online courses where the latest academic thinking was presented, and this research is then being questioned and challenged by the learners. So we did not understand here simply the research dissemination in a unidirectional way, but we were really trying to deeply integrate it, the academic thinking and the research findings into the learning process itself, and also give feedback into the research question and challenge it at the same time. So this is the first focus I would like to suggest. The second one is, how can higher education institutions help to create communities of learners or experts? So let's just focus on two big moves, apart from all the digital innovations and technical innovations happening. I think what's the two big moves which are happening is the famous move away from teaching towards learning, or to say we have understood that frontal teaching is not really the best way for making students learn, so to go more to a student-centered learning environment. And also what Pep has mentioned in his previous talk, that linear learning careers are not there anymore. So it's not anymore school, university work, but they are more intertwined and multi-layered learning paths. So I have been taking his graph even further and having blurred all these different areas of work and education and leisure activities. And just to tell you one example of the daughter of one of my very good friends here in Florence. So she is playing on her iPad, and she's doing a lot of stuff on learning how to program, and she's playing. And if you look at it, it's really advanced arithmetics what she's learning, but it's not part of her school education. She might become a programmer one day, but she's doing it as a leisure activity. And I think this is just one example how these things today get intertwined and by technology can be enhanced. So the question really is, how do we share knowledge today and how do we learn today? And I think so the learning path is not so clear-cut anymore. And I also think that the actors participating in learning, the roles are not so clearly defined anymore. So there is teachers and learners and researchers and practitioners, but they all should be interacting with each other, and online learning spaces offer an opportunity to break down these walls and have them interacting with each other. So the question really is how higher education institutions can help and take a leading role to create these quality learning spaces where all of these people and also different types of institutions can easily meet. So again, one example from the practice. So we have been organizing this online course on how to best regulate energy markets, how to make them more efficient, how to make them more sustainable, very topical. This week we're having the climate summit in Paris, and also how to make them more fair. And in 2014 they have attended, this course was attended by more than 300 people from 39 countries. So very difficult to get them in one room, and it was the first of its kind worldwide as a course. And there people have been attending from various disciplinary backgrounds, engineers, economists, lawyers, and many more. And there were practitioners attending, students, researchers, and professors, and they were discussing energy regulation. They were sharing best practices from their countries, from their regions. They were questioning the latest academic thinking, which was fed into this online course, and they did even create new knowledge and new thinking, how to tackle issues. And so they were trying to overcome their disciplinary silos by trying to find a common language. And they were, by attending this course, all of these people together were creating a community of learners, and by becoming then, towards the end of the course, a community of experts. So higher education institutions need to exploit the potential of online learning spaces and also of social media to bring together people, to break down the walls from various backgrounds and also various institutions. So I mean, there's today, there's so many institutions you can think about, from museums to universities to schools to professional organizations who can learn from each other. And I think as universities, we can provide the quality and the legitimacy of safeguarding the knowledge in these places. The third focus I am proposing is, let's look at how people engage with the world when they have learned something. So what do students do and other lifelong learners need to do with their acquired knowledge? So when the big question here is really, when does learning really happen? And I want to give you this one example because I find it an outstanding example by Daniel Kahneman, the Nobel Prize, a psychologist who won the Nobel Prize in economics. And he is asking how people make judgments and how they apply their acquired knowledge. And he is asking in one of the small chapters, can psychology actually be taught? And then he's telling about this experiment where students have been taught about these very surprising statistical facts about people. And the students are telling their colleagues and their friends about these very surprising statistical facts. But when these people are then asked to apply this knowledge, when they have to use this knowledge to make a judgment and to change their deep beliefs, you can see that they haven't learned anything. So his conclusion is that the experiment with the researchers supports the uncomfortable conclusion that teaching psychology is mostly a waste of time. And I would like to emphasize the word mostly here, because it's not always a waste of time. The thing he would like to stress is we have to understand how learning really works and when it works. So we have to be very careful. The simple transfer of information and statistical facts, even surprising statistical facts, is not enough when we want deep learning to happen. So again, what we have been trying in our online course is we have been trying to integrate the newest insight of cognitive science, of neuroscience, to understand when do people really learn. And then we have been asking them to work on real-life examples to really see and to test whether they are applying their knowledge and whether they can do something with it. And again, very topical, so we have been asking them, you have to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in your country by 40% in 2025, how would you do it? And then these people had to use all what they were supposed to learn to answer this question. But what I really would like to say is, it's connecting a little bit what Professor Weiler has mentioned previously. So I think we need to understand the value of pedagogical experts, of learning experts, of cognitive scientists. So we need a culture of teaching and learning. If we really don't, what can we afford to waste our time in teaching something where nothing is coming across, if we want to engage with the world in a meaningful way? So I think we have to deeply integrate insights from cognitive science and neuroscience into learning, and rather than having a lot of frameworks and indicators of quality and teaching and learning frameworks, I think we need to have a culture and we need to support the exchange of best practices and debates on teaching and learning. And I think there we really are only at the start. So this was my last point, and so just to say, so I would propose to really focus on these three areas, to think about the interaction between research and teaching and learning. What can higher education institutions do to create communities of learners, and how do we have to teach to really make people engage with the world? Thank you very much for your attention.